Okay, everything in this lesson is going to be vocabulary. So if you have a question about what something means, you have to ask, and you have to put these down on note cards and just study them over and over again, because you're not going to be able to do any of this if you don't know what the vocabulary means. The first word is a median. When you see the word median, think of the word middle and median. A median is a segment in a triangle that starts at a triangle's vertex and goes to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. So BD is a median. That would mean that D is the midpoint of AC. Okay, and here is the formal definition. It's a segment in a triangle with one endpoint at the vertex and the other endpoint at the opposite side of the vertex at the opposite side's midpoint. Or just think it connects a vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. The next word is the altitude. An altitude of a triangle starts at a triangle's vertex and connects the opposite side at a right angle. So BD here is going to be perpendicular to AC. Okay, so the formal definition is going to be a segment in a triangle with one endpoint at the vertex and it's perpendicular to the opposite side. So think vertex to the right angle. Okay, now that you know those vocabulary words, you have to be able to, as soon as you see a triangle with the vocabulary word in it, you have to know how to mark your triangle. So it says here to mark the segment or the angle based on the information provided below it and then indicate what you marked. So on the first one, if AE is the median of triangle ABC, and the first thing I should do is put my hash marks that show that E is the midpoint. So BE is congruent to EC. Now what did I mark? I'm going to write that down here. BE, I marked congruent to EC because a median connects a vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Alright, so you try number 2. If number 2 is a triangle with BD as the altitude, what should I mark on this triangle? Pause the video and see if you come up with what I do. Okay, so as soon as you see the word altitude, you should automatically put a right angle because an altitude is a vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. You could have written here that angle BDC is equal to 90 because that's what you marked, unless you marked BDA equal to 90. Or you could have said that BD, you marked that it was perpendicular to AC. Okay, so now we're going to use that vocabulary. So those markings that we made up here, you're going to make them every time you see these vocabulary words. In order to find the value of x, we take the fact that AD is the altitude of triangle ABC. Well, if AD is the altitude, then that means it connects the vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. Well, if this is a right angle here, that means it equals 90 degrees. And they told us that that 90 degrees, where we put the right angle, is 11x plus 7. So this 11x plus 7 should equal 90 degrees. The first thing I'm going to do is subtract 7 from both sides of my equation. So I get 11x equals 83. I'm going to divide by 11 on both sides. And I will get a decimal. I'm going to get x equals 7.5. I'm going to call it 7.55. And I'm going to check my work just to make sure I did it right. 11 times 7.55 plus 7 should equal 90. So I do 11 times 7.55 plus 7 equals 90.05. And the reason it's going to equal 90.05 and not exactly 90 is because I rounded here. And since I rounded up, then it's going to be a little bit bigger than 90. But since you know you rounded, you should remember that and know that that's why your exact answer is going to be a little bit off. Okay, I want you to try number 2. BD is the median of ABC. So how should you mark your picture, first of all? And now that you've marked your picture, how do you solve for x? How do you set up your equation? Pause the video and let's see what you get. Okay, and you should have gotten x as 1.5. And if you got that, go ahead and move on to the rest of the notes. If not, let's see what you did wrong. If BD is the median, remember a median connects a vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. So that means that AD is congruent to DC. And algebraically, when two sides are congruent, their measures are equal. So AD equals DC. So that means that since these two are equal, I set them equal to each other algebraically. 3x plus 4 equals 11x minus 8. I'm going to start by subtracting 3x from both sides. I'm going to get 4 equals 8x minus 8. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. I'm going to get 12 equals 8x, divide by 8. So I get x equals 1.5. Plug that into here and here. 3 times 1.5 plus 4 equals 8.5. And 11 times 1.5 minus 8 equals 8.5. So because these equaled each other when I substituted my x in, that means I know I did it right. Okay, this is where the vocabulary really goes a lot more in depth. So you have to know what a median is, and you have to know what an altitude is. You also have to know what an angle bisector is and a perpendicular bisector. If you don't know what any of those are, raise your hand and let me know if it's not a median or an altitude that we just talked about earlier. A point of concurrency. Point of concurrency, well, we know that two lines intersect at one point. Well, if you have 3 or more lines that intersect at a point, we call that point. So here, a point of concurrency. The next set of vocabulary words are all going to be points of concurrency, meaning they're all going to be 3 or more lines intersecting at a point. And all of these points of concurrency are going to exist inside of a triangle. The first one is called the incenter. The incenter is formed by making 3 angle bisectors of a triangle. So if I bisect this angle, if I bisect this angle, and if I bisect this angle with this bisector here, this bisector here, this bisector here, this point is called the incenter. And as soon as you see the word incenter, you should automatically mark your angles. Incenter, mark this angle congruent to this angle, mark this angle congruent to this angle, mark this angle congruent to this angle. The next vocabulary word is called a centroid. Remember, center and centroid sound the same, and so do middle and median. Well, centroid, center, middle, median, is going to be where 3 medians intersect in a triangle. So we know these are medians because they connect a vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Well, this point where those 3 medians intersected right here is called our centroid. And as soon as you see the word median, mark your sides immediately. Sorry, not median, but centroid. Mark your medians. So we mark this side congruent to this side congruent to this side, and this side congruent to this side. The next point of concurrency is the circumcenter. The circumcenter is going to be 3 perpendicular bisectors that intersect inside of a triangle. So here's a perpendicular bisector of the side. Here's another perpendicular bisector of the side. And then here's the third perpendicular, here it is, perpendicular bisector of the side. So as soon as you see the word circumcenter, automatically mark the bisector part of the angle, or the side. Bisects this side, bisects this side, bisects this side, and immediately mark the right angle because of the perpendicular part of the definition. This point is your circumcenter. The last point of concurrency is the orthocenter, and that's where three altitudes intersect in a triangle. So altitude, remember, is a vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. Vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. Vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. That point here is called the orthocenter. As soon as you see the word orthocenter, automatically mark where your right angles are. Okay, now we're going to apply our definitions using figures and algebra. So the first one says that D is the circumcenter. Immediately, circumcenter, we should note, is three perpendicular bisectors. So as soon as we see the word circumcenter, we want to write in where our right angles are. This is a perpendicular bisector. This is a perpendicular bisector. This is a perpendicular bisector. And we need to mark the bisector part. E bisects AB, so AE is congruent to EB. BF is congruent to FC. And AG is congruent to GC. Well, if you look here, we have a 37, and the only thing that we know about 37 is that it's congruent to this side, so this side is also 37. That's not going to help us find x. Here is where we find x. This is a right angle, so this too is a right angle. And a right angle is equal to 90 degrees. So this angle, 8x plus 50, is equal to 90 degrees. I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides of my equation. So I get 8x equals 40. Divide by 8 on both sides of my equation. So x equals 5. The next part of my problem says to find the measure of BFD. Well, BFD is B to F to D, this angle. And remember, we already marked that angle as a right angle. So this angle, we set it equal to 90. Its measurement should be 90 degrees. So I'm just going to check my algebra from the beginning and see if that does in fact equal 90 degrees. Well, I said x equals 5, so that means 8 times 5 plus 50 should equal 90 degrees. 8 times 5 is 40, and 50 is 90 degrees. So I did that right. The measure of BFD is 90 degrees. Alright, so using the definition for centroid number 2, pause the video and see if you get what I get. Mark your picture and use that to find x and z. Okay, you should have gotten z is 3 and x is 2. If it's the centroid, that means that this is 3 medians. And 3 medians connect a vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Opposite side, vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. Vertex to the opposite side at the opposite side's midpoint. So what's happened here is all of these sides, 5z and plus 6 and 7z, that set of sides is going to be equal to each other. This set is going to be equal to each other, and this set is going to be equal to each other. So we have to use what we have in the picture. We have this set of sides equal to each other, so 5z plus 6 equals 7z. Subtract 5z from both sides. So I get 6 equals 2z, divide by 2. So I get z equals 3. Here I do the same thing. These are medians, so this is congruent to this. BF is congruent to FC. So 37 equals 15x plus 7. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. So I get 30 equals 15x. Divide by 15. I get x is 2. Alright, try number 3. It says that D is the orthocenter. So if D is the orthocenter, what can I mark on my picture using the definition of orthocenter in order to find x? Pause the video. Alright, using the definition of orthocenter, you're going to get x is 30. Orthocenter means 3 altitudes. And remember, an altitude connects a vertex to the opposite side at a right angle. So this is a right angle. So 2x plus 30 is a right angle or equal to 90. I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides, so I get 2x equals 60. Divide by 2, I get x is 30. The last one, it says K is the incenter. Use your definition above to find out which markings to make on your picture for incenter and solve for x. Pause the video. Okay, and you should have gotten y is 3. As soon as you see the word incenter, you should mark that the incenter is where 3 angle bisectors come together. So 1 angle bisector here, 2 angle bisector here, and this is also an angle bisector here. Well, angle bisector divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. So 10y equals 9y plus 3, because those are congruent. All I have to do in this equation is subtract 9y from both sides. So I get 10 minus 9y is y equals 3.